Good evening, everyone. Oh, thank you. Welcome to tonight's Community Forum on Policing. I am Caroline Sturgis, the Assistant Chief Administrative Officer with the County Executive Office. One of my core responsibilities is helping the County Executive promote his priority outcome, safe neighborhoods. We are pleased that you have joined us here tonight and to have the County Executive Mark Elrich and Council Member Will Jawando host this forum. I'd like to thank our moderator for the evening, Jim Stowe, Director of the Office of Human Rights. I also want to thank everyone who assisted in organizing and supporting the event tonight. And finally, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedules to participate in this evening. Our objective tonight is to hear from you, your thoughts on policing in the county. How can Montgomery County Police improve its engagement and collaboration strategies with the community? What policies are working and what are not? And what should be considered in the hiring process for a new police chief? The hiring process and timeline is available on the county's website. The community has been invited to complete an online survey which highlights the qualities and characteristics that we should seek in a police chief. To date, over 900 residents have responded to the survey. If you have not completed the survey, you are invited to do so tonight. The survey will close on Monday, June 10th. As you enter the auditorium tonight, you may have received written instructions on how to complete the survey. Included on there is an online tool, the Mentimeter, where you can complete the survey. Instructions are also projected on the screen behind me. The last question on the survey allows you the opportunity to write down a comment for this evening. Some of those comments will be projected on the screen. The survey is anonymous, so whatever you write down, none of your contact information will be made public. At the end of the night, we will share the results of the survey. So before I move on to the agenda and the real reason why you're here tonight, I'd like to give you a quick update on the process for hiring the new police chief. An interview panel has been created, which includes representatives from the County Executive's Office, County Council, the Sheriff's Office, and members from the community. Interviews will be conducted throughout the month of June. The interview panel will select the top finalists and recommend those individuals to the county executive and the chief administrative officer for interview. Those interviews will continue throughout the end of June. Upon completion of the second interview, the finalists will meet with a community panel in July. At the conclusion of the community panel meeting, the county executive will present the top candidate for appointment to the county council in August for confirmation. This forum and online survey were organized so that we may hear from you about the most important policing matters and to help guide us in our search for the new police chief. Your presence here tonight is a significance of this topic. As a woman of color, I am passionate about working in local government and with the communities to help ensure that everyone has the opportunity to thrive in a safe environment. I am proud to work with a leadership team that also believes in this philosophy. We have heard you and we will continue to listen to you as we strive to improve community policing in Montgomery County. Once again, thank you for your time, and I will now turn the mic over to Jim.
Thank you, Caroline. Good evening, everybody. Okay, I know it's about 6 o'clock, 6:30 by now, but we're off now, so let's start again. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. It is a delight to be with Montgomery County tonight. We're here to make us better. And so we're looking forward to your statements and your comments to that effect, so that we all will be in a position then to be proud of what we end up making it. As stated, I am the director of the Office of Human Rights. It is a privilege to serve in that capacity, and I put an accent on the word serve. That's what we should be doing, those of us who are hired by you in the public service of this great community. So, a few ground rules before we introduce our special guests and our servants for this evening. Let me just share with you a little bit about what the objectives are beyond those that Caroline has outlined. It's a chance to be heard tonight. And County Executive Elridge and Councilmember Jawando want to spearhead that by ensuring that they hear you directly. And so to that end, we'll be asking you to make statements and share your comments as opposed to questions this evening. They want really to hear from you, whatever you have to say, whatever you want to say it, and oftentimes it's the reverse where you're not asked to make statements. You're asked again to, what's your question? But tonight you can ask and suggest your statement about your feelings about the topics before us. How do you feel about policing in Montgomery County? And be able to state that. We're going to give you 2 minutes to share that. And we're doing so we can sort of manage this. I'm hoping that there will be a statement from all of you. In order for that to happen, then obviously we got to make sure that you keep it to as close to 2 minutes as absolutely possible, so we can get in the maximum number of statements from all of you here in this great audience. We're asking you to speak for yourself. Share what you believe, what you think, but speak for yourself. We're not asking you to speak for a group, but speak for yourself. Also, we're asking that you allow persons, whether you agree or disagree with their statement, the courtesy of sharing that statement without interruption. And I'm sure we'll do that tonight. And the other thing I think is most important of all is that we will respect each other tonight as we express ourselves, because that's how we do things in Montgomery County. So I'm pleased to have Sharon with me tonight. There'll be 2 persons. Sean Ellis, where's Sean back there? Sean, step out so people can see you. Sean will have 1 mic, and he'll be on this side of the audience. I'm sorry, he'll be on that side of the audience. And then Lorna is here. Virgelli. Lorna Virgelli will be on this side of the audience with the mic. And once we begin the process, they'll be able then to share with you the microphone. So you'll be able then to, again, express yourself in whatever way you think is appropriate for you to share your comments. Okay, let me stop and just check in real quickly. Clear what we're going to do tonight? Is it clear? Give me a little bit of feedback. Is it clear? Yes. Excellent. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that indeed. Now, it's my great privilege and pleasure to introduce 2 persons who are servants of this community, and I'm so glad to work with both of them. First, we'll have them come and just share some comments. Let me just share with you what's going to happen next. When they share their comments, they will be leaving the floor, and they will go assume a position at this table, because they're going to be writing down comments that you are making. That's going to be their task for tonight. And so they'll be there for that purpose, and ensuring then that they're hearing things. I may come back and ask for clarification if it's not clear what you have shared, so they can write it down appropriately. So that'll be the task that they'll do. So they'll come and speak with you right now, and they move up then to the stage for that purpose. So without further ado, I want to bring to the microphone, actually has his own microphone now, but Mark Elridge, our county executive, followed by Councilmember Will Jawando.
So good evening, and I'm going to be very brief. My intention is to say as little as possible so that you can make as many comments as possible. So let me tell you what my basic intention is. I wanted to do this forum before we got into the selection of the police chief. I didn't want to do interviews with chief candidates until myself and members of the committee and hopefully the candidates, because I've suggested that if they're not here, they should watch it streaming, and if they don't watch it streaming, they should watch it otherwise, because I'm going to have questions that relate to what kind of comments we've heard from the community. So this is an important part of the process. It's something I think it's important that whoever the next police chief is understands what the expectations and concerns of the community are, so that they have a better understanding of what we're asking them to do as the next Montgomery County Police Chief. This is a critically important job. This is not the kind of job you can afford to make mistakes. An error in the police department is not like the ride-on bus running late. So I take this really seriously, and with that, I'm gonna have Will join me up here. He'll say a few words, and then we're gonna go listen. Thank you.
Thank you, County Executive. I will be brief, but not as brief. I have a couple of things I want to say, but so we can hear from you. I want to acknowledge, I saw at least two of my colleagues, the chair of the Public Safety Committee, Councilmember Sidney Katz, I don't know if there he is, and Councilmember Hans Reamer as well. You know the council, we just passed the bill, criminal justice reform bill that I sponsored, Law Enforcement Trust and Transparency Act, to require, thank you, to require independent investigations and to have the report be made public, because we need transparency and accountability. Those are key components to public trust in the police. We have more work to do. We're working on other legislation. This is part of that process, as the county executive mentioned. I also, because I have to do this every time she's here, I have to acknowledge my wife, Michelle Jawandu, who's here as well. So. And she always gets more applause than I do. We have a clear goal here. We just met, the county executive and I, with about 50 young people who were sharing with us their experiences with law enforcement off the record in a roundtable discussion. And what's clear is that depending on who you are and what you look like, law enforcement happens differently to you based on your race, your immigrant status, where you are. And so we're going to hear from you directly and hear these stories, but know that we know that and we have work to do. As Mark said, we have a unique opportunity, the new police chief in 15 years. We have a new council, new county executive, so we are attuned to this, and we want to take action, make sure we get the right person in to set the right culture. The county executive appoints, and I want to credit him for doing this process and also having a public process where there's going to be community input in the interviews, so I want to thank him publicly for that. But the system's out of balance. You look at our statistics, African Americans make up 19% of the population. They account for over half of the arrests in 2018 in the county. If you add Latinos, they account for 27% of use of force and arrest and are only 20% of the population. So we have our people of color comprising over 75% of arrests and use of force situations here in the county. And when you look at that and you see the recent things that have happened in White Oak and other places, and we're getting ready to commemorate the 1-year anniversary of the killing of Robert White in Silver Spring, an unarmed black man who was walking in his neighborhood, we can't have policing happen the same way with these types of outcomes. It's not okay. And that's not to say that our men and women in law enforcement are bad. They are working, many of them are good people working hard, but this system is flawed. And this is a national problem, and we're not immune here in Montgomery County. So we need to work on this. We commit to working on it, and we're here to hear from you about your experiences so we can make that progress. So I thank you all for being here. I thank the community groups that have been advocating and are here, and thank you everyone for showing up. Thank you very much.
All right. What we're going to do, if you will, just raise your hand when you're recognized, and what we'll do is you will help by coming to the end of the row. I know that means some moving about, but so we have to do tonight to get your comment on for us. And let me just also say to you that our firefighters were here tonight. We'll make sure people knew that we're here tonight. I want to thank them again, Captain Kennedy and his crew from the EEO department, from our firefighters, from Fire and Rescue Services is the proper name for the department. Okay, we need to make one quick adjustment in that we started late. We're gonna go and then till Caroline to 8:45 to give them the full 2 hours. That way it's fair to you. You were here on time. We were not quite ready for you, so we're gonna extend that to 8:45. We'll still get you out here at a hard stop at 9 o'clock. We promised. Okay. First up over here, and we'll come back over here, back and forth until we, again, entertain all the comments we possibly can in our 2-hour period of time. Go ahead.
Good evening. My My name is Rita Montoya. I'm here on behalf of the Tacoma Park People of Color Collaborative. I'd like us all to take a second to remember Khalif Browder, who was a juvenile arrested in 2010 as a 16-year-old. He endured solitary confinement as a juvenile. Because of that, he ultimately committed suicide 3 years ago in June for a case that ultimately got dismissed. Now, I bring that up because just a week ago, 10 minutes down the road at Northwood High School, there is a young man who is 18 years old who was arrested for cannabis-related charges for a street value of $450. He is now looking at 20 years in a cage. He is a young black male. He was a high school student. In the same week, Maryland accepted 160 applications for grower and processor licenses of cannabis in the state of Maryland, and they've already issued 100 dispensary licenses for people to sell it. Now, if this young man had investors, if he had some entrepreneurial spirit or the backing of Big Canna, then maybe we would be congratulating him and hailing him as the youngest black dispensary owner in the country. Maryland is actually, I believe, still home to the youngest black dispensary owner in the country at Marion, Maine, but maybe it would be this young man instead of him looking at a cage. So what I'd like to say today is that I do not believe this is a good use of policing efforts and resources. It's not a good use of Montgomery County or Maryland resources, and it's definitely not a good use of our tax dollars. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, yes, sir.
My name is Lowell Hayes. I may take more than 2 minutes, but I think it's deserved after being discriminated against in this county for the last 31 years. My first unlawful arrest was in 1988. I reached out to the NAACP, ACLU. No one did anything. I reached out to County Executive Leggett between now and then for multiple cases. Nothing was done. I was arrested at a Starbucks in 2014. The officer was found in court to be under perjury or lie. The statement of that judge was, obviously this officer has embellished the story and is not credible. Why is that officer today still on the force arresting people? Why is it that AID brushed that under the table, okay, after telling me that that same officer had 2 other cases on him? I reached out to Ike Leggett for decades, literally the whole time he was in office, and got nowhere because here's what I found. I got PTSD real bad from all of this. But here's what I found. I found that whenever there's wrong, wrong will always protect wrong until it has no choice but stand up for right. And I'm telling you now, that officer perjured himself in court. So it's wisest for you all to reach out to me at some point in the near future because A, there's no statute of limitation on perjury in court. B, neither is there a statute on any civil actions that come out of it as well. So I put you all on notice long ago. I spoke to you, Mr. Elric. You told me to talk to you with the email. I don't do email. If I try to do email in 30 seconds, I have a migraine. So I came to your office to get an appointment, which was set, or so I thought, but then I'm told it's not set. That's one of the problems. When you make appointments, let's keep them. If you tell somebody you want to sit down and talk, let's do that because, Mr. Stowe, I came to you years ago for help. And you found out that everything that I was telling you was true. Why is it that you did nothing? Because wrong will always stand for wrong and not do for right unless it's absolutely necessary. And that's one of the biggest problems in government. And it's definitely one of the biggest problems with the police force that would hold on to somebody lying to people, lying on people in court, okay? In court, being found to be in perjury. Why is he still on the force today? I walk around with PTSD. I don't leave my house in this park because if I do, I get harassed. A year ago, I'm at a Starbucks, a cop sitting at the same table as me. Some guy comes up behind me while I'm sitting there discussing things with my sensei of 20 years. This guy says to me, if that cop wasn't sitting right there, I would kill you, was his words. You know what I said to the cop? This is okay with you? What did he say in uniform? I'm not really working right now. He got up and ran off into the bookstore. I turned around and had to tell the guy that was standing there still, what I'm about to do to you is still going to be his fault. And he took off. I'm not a violent person. I will protect myself. You threw my dog in a pound when you arrested me for nothing. She has issues now with other dogs because of it. Think of what I go through after 31 years of this. You bring a dog near her, she starts the whole nine. Mary Lewis of Starbucks, who helped me be charged, okay, who they thought was a lowly security guard that day at that shopping center, turns out in 2 weeks after he's taken his bar exam, he's now an officer and has agreed to come to federal court and testify on what really happened that day.
We need to wrap up. We need to wrap up.
The county also,
We need to wrap up.
paid for a out-of-state company to come in and do an investigation. Well, I still have that investigation that proves that everything that I said was nothing but truth. And I was polygraphed by the CIA, and I can prove that too. And you know what they found out? 99.99% lack of deception, which is the highest score you can get.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We did give her extra time. Okay, all right, let's get back over. Thank you, sir. Please, ma'am.
My name is Sasaki Fallingstead. I'm a longtime resident of Montgomery County, and I have a couple of things that I'm concerned that I did not see reflected in what was expected of the future police chief. One is that a couple of years ago, during the candidate debates for executive, I brought up a question about the Trust Act and the lack of one in Montgomery County, and was told, well, we have a policy, so we don't have to worry about that. Well, now we're having a change in police chief, and I didn't see anything about the policies around the Trust Act reflected in what is expected of the new police chief. The other thing I want to bring up is the consequences of unconscious bias. I've been seeing it over and over again. And I'm speaking of my own too. I've certainly been learning how I have been unconscious in the past. You can see it in what happened with Robert White. You can see it in the McDonald's stop. You can see it in the grandmother who was moving in. You can see it in personal experiences, the difference between when I get stopped by a policeman for a traffic or something, I may get a warning when somebody else gets a ticket. There's clearly over-policing in some areas. We shouldn't be having these kinds of events like Robert White and that happening. And at the same time, even at the event last week in North Potomac, where people were asking for more policing, saying, geez, people didn't show up for 30 minutes for our talks, I couldn't help but wonder if part of the reason nobody showed up for 30 minutes was that the voice on the other end of the phone was a minority. So I think it's really important that the new police chief consider and put a focus on training around unconscious bias and minimizing the effects of that happening.
Thank you so much for that comment. Over here.
This side over here.
Good evening. My name is Tiffany Kelly. I've been in Montgomery County since December of 2018. And one of my fears in moving here was the area I live in is very, they have very little diversity. And we know what happens when someone that doesn't look like they belong is in a place that they don't quite fit in. On May 14th, my worst nightmare came true. I received a call from an officer stating that she had questioned my son about bringing play money on a school bus. No one called me. Upon hearing that an officer was calling me, I thought dead, jail, kidnapped. They certainly were not calling me to tell me how great my son was. At what point as a professional do you say, you called me, but I am not needed here? This is not a crime. I'm leaving. The officer decided not to do that. She questioned my son without calling his parent. Very involved parent, might I say. All children do the same things. Every last child I know, they all do the same things, but the interventions look completely different based on your class, your economic status, and your color. No matter what you believe, crime is big business. The more crime we have, the more jails we need, the more officers we need. You will not make $1 off of my child's back, not one. I am disrupting the school-to-prison pipeline today. And that's what we need. We need officers that can critically think and be able to say, I don't need to be here. This is not a crime. And if you are just wantonly calling officers, then you need to get in trouble, not me. I want to say thank you to Councilman Jawando and also Councilman Reamer, because when I reached out to them, they responded immediately. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that comment. We appreciate that again. Folks, we want to make sure to do that. We will come to you. Rather have you stand in the aisleway. We'll come to you. If you just raise your hand, we'll come to where you are. That way you can go ahead and take your seat. We'll come to you. Now we understand, okay? Go ahead.
My name is Germa Alaro. I'm a resident of Montgomery County for the last maybe more than 40 years. First of all, before I say anything, I was out of the country for a month and a half. For all of us traveling around the world, the democracy we exercise in America, how beautiful it is. It is really amazing. And to hear, I came to this, and it's amazing to see our county executive, Mark Ehrlich, and Judge Want to bring this issue here. This is on time. Always we are in action. My question is, Transparency Act and law enforcement is on target, and I'm not going to really comment too much on that. I would like to hear, as transparency in law enforcement, I want also transparency in all the government, in particular in our permit office, in particular in the DPW, in particular every month this kind of law enforcement report to be done. What you're doing is great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go back over here.
Good afternoon. I am June Henderson. I am a resident of Montgomery County, Maryland. At this point, I'm not sure if I still want to be here. I may want to go back to Arkansas with the treatment that I've had here. It's very difficult for me to talk about this.
Okay, take your time, take your time, take your time. Take your time.
On October 23rd, 2018, I was forcibly evicted in a foreclosure action that spanned for about 10 years. The day before, I received a letter from a law firm stating that they would give me $5,000 to move. In fact, there were several attorneys involved in this, including the clerk of the court, who was aware of the issues with my foreclosure, aware of the fraud. I had a hearing scheduled in March 2018 that was canceled. Don't know who canceled it. October 23rd, I was forcibly evicted, handcuffed by the sheriff's department. The 3D police officer showed up. I did come out. There's a body cam. There's a 911 as well. I came out. My hands were up. I said I have a disability and I can't even think. Anxiety disorder. My hands were up. I came out, I wasn't really dressed. As I came out, I remember being handcuffed and sitting on the floor. I've gone to Governor Hogan, Senator Van Harlan, Tom Hucker, prior to the incident 2 years ago. What they allowed was for Reed Smith, one of the largest law firms in the country, to respond on the behalf of the mortgage servicer. So, on October 23rd, I was handcuffed, told that if I didn't stand up, you would put me on a gurney. They put me on a gurney, strapped my legs, then strapped me across my chest. The EMT showed up, and I was struck in my neck while I was handcuffed. I have spinal stenosis. I have issues with my neck as well. I reached out to Internal Affairs, the deputy director, who said, well, my officers did nothing. I didn't see them do anything. I did email the commander in April basically saying, you know, I don't choose to have an adversarial relationship with the police. But when I go to the sheriff's department, oh, you were just evicted. When I go to the police department, oh, you were just evicted. No, I was assaulted. And no one has done anything. It's been 7 months. I was taken to Holy Cross Hospital, left there for 8 hours. After 8 hours, that's for a psych evaluation. No drugs, no alcohol. Told I could leave after 8 hours because the question was, do you want to hurt yourself or anyone else? I have a degree in social work, so I need not to say that. No one knew where I was, but I got a tweet out, and my friends were able to find me. My neighbor recorded some of it. While I was handcuffed, a real estate agent said, they're doing me right. They took my phone so that I couldn't show them the letter that I had the day before the real estate agent did. No one has done anything. I'm trying to put my life back together. I'm an advocate for White Oak. I'm with the group Friends of White Oak. I'm moving downtown, probably, but I'll still work in the community.
Thank you so much for that. I know that was tough to share. Thank you very much. All right. We're going to again try our very best to keep it to 2 minutes, folks, if at all possible. But again, I am a human being. I understand how hurt works. And so I hope you all will understand that as well. And work with us on people who need to kind of get this out. I want to be fair to everybody, however. So let's make real sure then that we stick to 2 minutes if we possibly can. And we'll be timing as best we can. Okay, over here.
All right, my name is Dr. Sophia Marjanovic. I came here to Montgomery County to do research at NIH and get my PhD. However, I'm homeless now. And the reason for it is because, one of the reasons for it is because of the heavy policing here in Montgomery County. I lost custody of my child to my domestic abuser. A police officer was involved and lied to the court, claiming that me just video recording every interaction between the cop and my domestic abuser was the worst thing he had ever seen in his life. Me, just video recording. I'm sure this guy has seen rapists, murderers, but me, a woman, a scared survivor of domestic violence, was the worst thing he had seen. I haven't been able to function. I obviously have PTSD. Having lost custody of my child to my abuser, having not been able to see my son, who was 28 months old and still breastfeeding when I lost custody of him, and not being able to function, I then, somehow, I don't even know how, I finished up my PhD and defended my thesis, but no one was hiring me because they didn't understand the trauma I'd been through. And so I began driving for Uber and Lyft. However, because of the struggles I've had with PTSD, I would have trouble some months just trying to make ends meet, and I'd be driving 3 o'clock in the morning just to try and make those ends meet. Montgomery County has stopped me several times. I wasn't able to work because they have discretion, police officers have discretion to choose whether or not to take someone into court for an arrestable offense. I was driving on a suspended license because I was struggling with poverty. I wasn't able to make ends meet. I was begging the cops. I was having panic attacks during these stops. And the police still decided to not have any mercy on me and instead haul me off into court. And every time I've been hauled off into court, this is every 3 months pretty much for the past couple of years. Every time I've been hauled off into court, the majority of people in court look like me, look Native American, Latino, have Latino last name, Latino last names. Those are the majority of people in courts for arrestable offenses. I also court watch, and I see this systematically. So, because as a scientist, I'm going, this doesn't make sense that this happened to me. Is this happening to other people? And yes, it's happening to other people. And so, being unable to work, I wasn't able to pay rent. I'm now staying with friends. But the way this county has exercise policing and the way the police are investigating themselves and exonerating themselves. I'm sorry, Councilman Chuando, you know my position. Police investigating police is not justice.
Thank you.
Going-
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And so, one moment.
Okay.
So I still run court watches. I'm also running cop watch patrols. You can contact me. I have some flyers and give that out afterwards.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Over here.
Good evening, my name is Sandra Zeese. I've been a Montgomery County resident since 1983, and I'm here because I'm concerned about racial profiling by the Montgomery County Police. I believe that the fatal shooting of Robert White, who was an unarmed man walking in his neighborhood, was part of a pattern of racial profiling by a Montgomery County police officer. I believe that the use of the N-word by a female officer in addressing 3 youth at McDonald's who were waiting for a carpool to go to work was another example of racial profiling and verbal and racial abuse. That officer, I hope, is not on my payroll. I am a taxpayer. I want her off my streets and off my payroll immediately. I also understand that there may be a federal, state, or Montgomery County partnership with the state of Israel to train police. I do not believe that any of our police should be trained by anyone in the Israeli police force. They have a very different situation. We do not need to train people how to profile. We need to train people in how to overcome implicit bias. So I want an annual implicit bias screening for every officer, and I want follow-up training in sensitivity and understanding people's own racial bias, because if they're left to their discretion and they have racial bias, we are going to end up with the situation that we have right now, and it's not acceptable and has to stop.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Over here.
Good evening, I'm Reverend Barry Mosley, Youth and Young Adult Pastor of Mount Calvary Baptist Church. For our next chief of police, we need a chief that understands our community and our cultures, that knows all of the areas of Montgomery County and all of the diversity of Montgomery County. But we also need a chief that is really focused on preventative measures, not arresting and jailing people. We need someone that wants to find ways to help our children to grow and nourish and to keep them safe. We need a chief that wants to look preventatively at how we get guns out of the hands of people that shouldn't have guns. We need a chief that fully understands community policing. We don't need another jailer. We don't need a warden. We need a humanitarian that understands the law. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Back over here. What's up?
Hi, good evening, thank you, and I want to thank you for holding this forum. And I'm obviously a white guy, but I was also subject to a lot of police abuse back in 30, 40 years ago. And so what I do know is that absolute power corrupts absolutely, regardless. So now I work with the police in a different way, more cooperatively, and represent a variety of different organizations. So my interactions with the police have been pretty good recently. But I want to talk about a couple of things, having lived through the sniper years here, which was probably the scariest time of my life, having experienced a couple other things, and having done a little research into this area. I want to talk more specifically and also follow up on this gentleman's last point, which is a police chief and police need to be more proactive rather than reactive. Part of what my understanding is that it's really all about training. And what we usually hear from the police is, well, we don't have enough resources. Well, we respond when we get a call. Well, what about those times that you're not on call? What are you doing when you're not writing up reports and you're sitting in your car? Could you maybe be in our neighborhoods? So this concept of neighborhood policing, I think that is going on nationwide and had a lot of emphasis prior to the current administration, is something that needs to really be pursued. And I believe that Chief Manger was part of that in some way, shape, or form. And of course, he's still a resource for us here since he's part of the chiefs of major police cities, or whatever the real name is. Anyway, the point is, I represent a community that has, in the Central Business District in Wheaton, perception of crime. And that's a problem between the WMATA garage, the police, Westfield, the community, and perception. And that's a real problem. I also represent a community a little further north, not far from here, in Glenmont Forest, where our biggest issues are about parking, code enforcement, traffic issues, things along that line. So we're very lucky we don't have the murders and drugs necessarily in our specific neighborhood, but when we communicate with the police, what do we hear? Well, you know, that's kind of low on our priority list, and nobody's gonna come write tickets, and so a couple of cars get smashed along the way because, you know, there's not enough room there, and they're parking illegally, etc. So you get my point. The point that I really want to follow up on is that all this.
You have like 3 seconds.
Yeah, I will finish up. But the point is that it comes back to training. And we're talking about equity, and we're talking about equity in the police force and in the community, but we need to be able to train our officers. For instance, from what I understand in the killing last year, was really more about how to deal with mental health issues. And how not to be so reactive that you're afraid you're going to lose your life, and so you have to shoot somebody. Whatever happened to aim to maim, not to kill?
Okay, thank you so much. Next person over here.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Denise Young, and I've been in the county for about 26 years. I'm a mother of 2 sons, both of whom have been stopped by the police before they turned 18. My first comment is that I appreciate this effort, but we have to do a better job of getting in front of the people who are most impacted by police brutality and racist law enforcement. As a county, I'd like to see Montgomery County take the lead in passing some legislation regarding the inexcusable practice of hiring police officers who've been involved in any racist or violent incidences. Also, while I appreciate the idea of unconscious bias, I also believe that there is no way that we can have an honest conversation about policing in this county unless we are talking about structural racism that also permeates every facet of our living in this county. Fourthly, as a community, I hope that we understand that we have to be a watchdog not only for the police, but also for the for the police superintendent. We have to be willing to have each other's backs. We have to be willing to step out and be able to say, listen, this is not right, this is inexcusable, because people's lives are on the line. And also, again, going back to the point of really being able to get in front of people. If this is any indication of what's happening in the county, then you really need to take very seriously about having dialogue and communication with your county members. People are hurting.
Thank you so much. Over here.
Good evening. I'm here on behalf of the Black Ministers Conference of Montgomery County. As far back as Chief Edwards, there have been efforts made to address the issue of becoming more sensitive to the diversity here in Montgomery County. I know for a fact because I taught the course. So it's not that there's a disinterest. I think there is an interest. The question becomes, how do we become effective in doing that? Chief Manger has been extremely active with the Faith Community Advisory Council, with the racial awareness training sessions that we've had at various churches. My question is, how do we ensure that the new chief will come with experience of addressing the issues of diversity as far as policing is concerned, and what measures will be implemented to ensure that it goes down to the rank and file? It's nice that the chief is on board, but it's the rank and file that does the policing. Now, the other issue based on what I'm hearing here, and I've heard many stories, what will we implement so that the voices of people will actually be heard and taken seriously? Otherwise, you'll have people, again, anytime there's a forum, there will be people there who said, I spoke up and nothing happened. So, what are we going to do for the chief? And what are we going to do to ensure that voices are heard from the community?
Thank you so much. Back over here.
My name is Zakia Sankara Jabbar. I am a newer resident of Montgomery County. I moved here from Ohio in 2017. I'm here today because I'm certainly concerned about the incidents that I've witnessed since living here, especially the murder of a young man last year. I'm a mother. My son is here with me. I have 2 children in Montgomery County Public Schools. And since we've been here, and since we have witnessed and experienced the fact that now that I live in a part of Silver Spring that is sort of segregated from other parts of the county, I see that the schools are segregated, and you all do a good job of projecting to the world that this is a very wonderful place to come and live, because that's why I chose this community. But now my son goes to a school that is predominantly Black and Latino, and that in and of itself isn't a problem. It's just that I actually thought that all the schools was that way until I realized that schools in what's considered the western part of the county versus the eastern part of the county. And so I'm noticing that policing is also done that way where I live. And so my husband and I have launched our organization that we initially started in Ohio, Racial Justice Now. We launched the DMV chapter, and we're going to be organizing, Black-led organizing in Montgomery County, Maryland. And so to that end, I want to make sure that I say and put on the record that I definitely think that implicit and explicit bias is something that should be taken very seriously during the selection process. And as someone else mentioned earlier, the other piece is that throughout the rank and file, even with the police and certainly with school police, I'm very concerned about that with an African-American son who's in middle school. So I think that not just the top, but also through the rank and file, there must be explicit and implicit bias training. But not only that, there needs to be consequences for police officers when they do misconduct. And I want to make sure that this county executive and the county council understands that, because we have a very good track record in Ohio.
Thank you so much. Over here.
Jeff, real quick, on the last point, the minister, I wanted to say 2 quick things. The council will introduce, and Councilman Reamer is the lead, I'm working with him on this bill on June 18th, a bill to create a police policy advisory committee that will be made up of citizens and be appointed between the county executive and the council, made up of citizens to review some of this disparate data and make recommendations on policy changes within the police department. Because of state law, we're prohibited from having a police accountability board for discipline. That's another issue, but this is a model that happened in Sacramento and is a way to have ongoing community input. On the first point, I think the incentive structure is wrong. When you walk into a police station and you see rankings, which I've seen from rank and file officers, which has been mentioned twice, of people who have the highest amount of arrests and tickets and they're on the top, and the people who have the lowest at the bottom, that sends the implicit or explicit message that you need to go out and get arrests. And where are you going to go when that's the message that you're receiving? You're going to go where your biases tell you to go, or where you think crime is based on what you know. And you're going to go and use trespass orders and loitering and other things, disorderly conduct, and you're going to write those citations. And even if you're not biased, if that pressure's on you, it's an unfair pressure. And so we need to be looking at things of, you need to be rewarded and on the board who tended the most community events, who de-escalated the most situations, who helped the most amount of people, which is happening. But if that's not the incentive structure, that's community policing. And so that's what I'm going to be looking for when we confirm a police chief. And I've talked to many officers over the last 6 months and before that want to do that they want to see that valued more and happen. We need to create a culture where that is what's valued.
Thank you, Councilman. Right here.
Good afternoon or good evening to everyone. My name is Diego Uriburu, and I have the privilege to serve young men of color and their families. And we have wonderful police officers in Montgomery County that save lives every single day. However, there are a few bad apples that make the lives of individuals who already live very precarious lives a lot worse. For some of them, the consequences of those actions are horrible and affect them throughout their lives. So we have seen examples right now of how bad situations went to way, way worse because of poor interactions. And then my recommendation then is, if black and brown young people and adults are the ones who are suffering the most on the hands of bad police officers, they are the ones who should have a voice in what happens with policies and practices for the police. Therefore, I fully support the advisory committee that Councilmember Hans Riemer is putting forward, which is supported by Councilmember Joando and by the County Executive. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your comment. Back over here.
My name is Diana Bird, and for 27 years I worked with the homeless and disabled as an employee of the Public Housing Authority. So I have seen just about everything there is to see. As a result of that, I now volunteer with Action in Montgomery. Action in Montgomery commits to doing 10 listening sessions across Montgomery County to determine what the citizens of Montgomery County are interested in seeing and what we can do to support the efforts of all of us to change what we think is unfair policing. And we hope, Mr. Elridge, that you'll meet with us at the end of the summer so that we can give you the results of our listening sessions.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Over here.
I know some people in the middle want to participate. We're going to come around in just a minute, okay?
Good evening, my name is Pablo Hernan. I serve in the Montgomery County Committee Against Violence and Hate. We have a police officer coming every month to our meetings to report hate crimes in the county. One is too many, and you can feel how terrible is the situation for those people who are suffering the hate crime. But I wish that would be the full report. For example, for Latinos, there is one report every 3 or 4 months. So I wish that would be the reality. You know that there are community members who are victims of hate crime, bias, but the police is not recovering that. It's not trained, it's biased, or there is not a system that ensures that we have real, accurate data and have to track those cases. So I wish the next chief of police is trained and is knowledgeable on how to ensure that every case is reported so they can address that situation. And the same situation probably is happening not only in the police office, in the police department, it's also at MCPS, where staff is not trained to receive this. Many staff do just the diversity training online 2 hours, check the box, and they think that they are just that. And it's not the case. We have a beautiful case in Montgomery County, a very successful case. When the new school opened, the Rustin Bayard new school opened, the principal spent 90% of the training before opening the school, 90% of the time, 6 days, in creating a new culture. Because she said, I know that my teachers are professionals and they will find a way to take the kids to the cafeteria the first day. I know they are professionals, they will know how to teach their topics, but I need to create a new culture in the school. And that is a very successful case that we can all see in our county. So I hope the new police will be trained many hours in person, not online.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Back over here.
Hello, my name is Bishop Paul Walker, founder and executive director of the Humanist Outreach Program, which goes in reentry. Just a few bullet points about a backstory. One, I think what I've heard a lot of is I would like to see that type of cultural sensitivity training while they're in the academy as opposed to after they get out of the academy. Maybe that's one way we can address it. The other is I hear this word community policing. When I hear community service, I hear in my mind and what I do is an attempt to serve that community in a way to better that community, in a way to be there for that community. So back when I was growing up, and I'm not going to tell my age, but when I was growing up, when police community meant that that officer was outside of his squad car or his or her squad car, and they actually walked the community and you knew who they were. They were on the baseball team with you, the football team with you, and they understood, and they were more about not so much as trying to parent, but yet they still were policing because they had the respect of the police, of the community because they knew them. I think if you're going to use that terminology, community policing, that we need to have this type of training where the police officers are more than just in their squad cars or when they get out of their squad cars, is another way. And thirdly and finally, I think if we're going to hold or want to hold certain levels of the police department accountable, we have to look at the head and hold the head accountable, which is why I think we're here with the good chief of police. We have to hold some accountability. Lastly, with my 10 seconds I think I have, is I would like to see follow-up after all of these type of meetings. What are we going to do after we do all of this talking?
Thank you so much. Over here. And folks, what we're going to do right now is this. Let's make sure, Sean, he said it that way right now. The middle of folks, we get to you right now. I apologize for slighting you. We'll make sure we're in the middle right now on both sides. On both sides. So last one here, and we'll come in the middle, and we'll go back on the outside. Over here. Thank you.
I'm Carlene Ponder, and I became active in police accountability last year after the killing of Robert White. The 1-year anniversary of that killing is coming up. It's Tuesday, June 11th. The community is holding a memorial for him. It's at Christ Congregational Church in Silver Spring on Colesville. See me, and I will have flyers in the back. I am particularly concerned that there's a culture of a lack of discipline within our police department. The officer who killed Robert White was not disciplined at all for anything, including initiating the stop, which was based on racial profiling. Beyond that, the suit involving Sharon Falk Foster, the grandmother, who told of having her entire family being stopped as they were attempting to move into a new apartment. They were stopped. She had her car searched. She and her daughter, I believe, were eventually handcuffed and told to sit on the side of the road while they called for police dogs to come and sniff the car. Nothing was found. There were supervisors on the scene. There were multiple police officers on the scene. This amounted to harassment. The family was crying. All of this is available in the complaint that was filed. There's a lawsuit against the county for this. I was disgusted when I read that. There's a lack of discipline. How do you have supervisors on the scene? This is allowed to occur. We saw the same thing with the young men in McDonald's. It wasn't just that the woman used the N-word, as reprehensible as that was. Those boys or young men were pushed up against the wall. They were handcuffed. Everything on them was searched. Why? There was no probable cause for that.
Thank you so much. Well said. Thank you.
Hello. I wasn't able to speak earlier because as many it's not kind of equipped for disabled. I'm legally blind. I've been here since before some of you who were putting it on. But some of what I have wanted to say has been said in different ways. And as to the issue of training, the pastor mentioned and the council member mentioned that it goes beyond that. I'm a proud member of the Caribbean American Heritage Advisory Group of the County Advisory. And in the Caribbean, you often have the cops, because everybody knows everybody. And I live in a condo community that's having a lot of problems. And a couple of cops come in there and they sit in their cop cars and everybody knows when the man is there. Well, the image of the man has to change. And if the man comes in and plays games and becomes human, then the man ain't the man anymore. I go back probably further than the pastor, that police officers and firemen used to come into the schools. We were taught, this is your friend. And of course, they're bad cops. I'm the mother of a police officer who stood down from a very high-paying job to do the job that he became a cop to be, working with high-risk kids. And so I just want us all to try to get on that page that cops aren't bad, they're people, but they need to be perceived as people, and they need more than classroom training. They need on-the-job practice.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. Yes, over here.
Hi, my name is Jay Jimenez. I'm from the ACLU of Maryland. I'm also I grew up in Montgomery County. I grew up not far from Robert White in Silver Spring. I wanted to bring up an incident that happened in mid-May of this year. There was a man who was swinging a knife in the middle of the street, swinging a knife at vehicles that were passing by, and I think he even swung a knife at police officers. Luckily and thankfully, that man was not killed. They formed a perimeter around him and they ended up tasing him. He was taken to the hospital, and that's where they discovered that he had a history of mental health disabilities. The reason I bring this up is because Robert White was killed by one police officer, and he was unarmed, and it's even questionable about why he was pulled over in the first place. So when you compare the two situations, I want the next police chief, and not only the next police chief, but residents and other officers to examine both incidents and see the Bethesda situation, which I don't have all the information. I've been looking for the information. I don't know the racial dynamics that were in play, but a man that was swinging a knife at vehicles and at police officers, he's still alive today, and that's the way it should be. Robert White didn't have any weapons on him, and the Bethesda situation just illustrates to me that his killing was unjustified. So I'm hoping that the next police chief has demonstrated commitment to avoiding deadly encounters, and for more situations where non-lethal use of force is used when necessary, like in Bethesda, and not the Robert White situation.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your comment. Yes.
Hi, I'm Reverend Katie Romano Griffin, and I have 3 really concise points. The first is that I hope our new police chief will make this a true sanctuary county and will instruct our officers not to coordinate with ICE. It is a broken immigration system. Secondly, I'm a proud Wheaton resident, very concerned about gentrification. I see the message boards, and the police are a weapon that are used in gentrification. To combat this, I mean, we're talking about a multi-headed beast here. It's white, cis, hetero, able-bodied patriarchy that we need to dismantle. And it's going to take more than singular trainings in person. How can our police chief really drill down through the entire system to have multicultural trainings that go beyond just implicit bias? Is it daily debriefs? What's it going to take to move things all the way through the system? And to my fellow residents here in Montgomery County, I charge you to get people you know to these amazing conversations that are being held by the interfaith community, so that we don't have neighbors calling the police on neighbors that are brown and black.
Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate it very much. Over here.
Can we just make sure that we get people on top too, you know, in the next iteration, in case people up top that can't.
Well, let me just stop, Councilman, if I may, and just simply ask, are there persons up there that have questions? Okay. All right, good enough then. We'll make sure we do that then. We'll come to the inside and we'll try to do our best to get to the top as well, but we're on the inside here, and we're over here to my left.
Hi, my name is Dr. Marcia Coleman Adebayo, and I'm president of the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition. Thank you very much. You can applaud. As you know, we are fighting to stop the desecration of an ancient African cemetery in Bethesda, Maryland, with thousands of Africans who were enslaved on River Road now do not lie in peace underneath a parking lot owned by the Housing Opportunities Commission. Every month we go to HOC, Housing Opportunities Commission, and we protest the fact that they are continuing the desecration of this sacred space. Last month I was removed from the HOC, supposedly because I spoke a minute over my 3-minute period. Once I was escorted out of the building along with some other colleagues who are here with me today. The policeman proceeded to tell me that because he was friendly, there were certain things that he was not going to do to me. He started to talk about all the violence he could do to my body. He talked about how he could punch me, how he could hit me, how he could grind me into the dirt. So I asked him, I said, are you telling me that I am supposed to be grateful to you because you decided not to hit me, not to punch me, and not to grind me into the dirt? This is unacceptable. And this is the very premise, quite frankly, of white supremacy. And it's that a white police officer felt he could open his mouth and tell me that he had a right to destroy my body. So we are asking everyone here, and the county executive knows about this. I've informed him as well as Will. I've called both of them. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten responses. But I believe in the people. I believe in us. And I believe we know that if this is happening to a black woman in Bethesda, Maryland, this is happening all over Montgomery County. And we are the people who are going to stop this insanity.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you. Here.
My name is Mark Pastor, and I've been a resident of Silver Spring for over 30 years. And one of the ways we deal with some of these horror stories that we've heard today, I think, is by making more information available to everybody about what's going on and how it happens. And while it seems like a detail, I'd just like to speak for a moment about what's on Data Montgomery, and more importantly, what isn't on Data Montgomery. Data Montgomery, for those of you who don't know, is a website the county runs that has a lot of data about traffic, a lot of things going on in the county. The county is supposed to be telling us, putting data out about all searches related to traffic stops. That data is not on Data Montgomery. It is not available to the public. What is available, the limited information that is available, is incomplete and inaccurate, while there's law that says it should be completely available. I would like to encourage you to do something about that immediately. Make sure a new chief is dedicated to that kind of information being public. And I want the more information about what the police department is doing at the rank and file level that's available to the public, the more we can monitor what's going on and see whether what's happening is what should be or not. So with that, I'd just like to push for more information there and to get that search data posted as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. We appreciate that response. Yes, sir.
Just real quickly, we have our data people here in the office, and I'll ask them, I'm here in the room, and I'll ask them to get that data, because we should be able to get this posted.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Tara Smith. I was raised in Montgomery County for more than half my life. One of the biggest issues that I have stems back to a conversation that I just had with my 9-year-old son less than a week ago. And it started when I asked him, I don't know what compelled me to ask him, but I asked him, I said, if you ever get stopped by the police and you know you didn't do anything wrong, what are you gonna do? And his first reaction was, run. I said, no, please don't run. No matter what you do, don't run. And then he was like, well, what am I supposed to do? And then I went on to kind of share my thoughts and express to him how I feel like he should handle those situations. And then it got down to, well, what do you do if you're in a holding cell? What if you do it if you're interrogated? And I, kind of walked him through this process. And eventually I got to the point where I was like, don't say anything, don't answer any questions. The only words that need to come out of your mouth is, I want to speak to an attorney. Mom and Dad will be called later. We will, I promise you that. I don't like that I have to have that conversation with my young black son, my 9-year-old son. That's not okay. It's not okay that that conversation has to be had, but it's not okay that that conversation is justified for having to be had, as evidenced by the White Oak incident that just transpired and with Robbie White. It's not okay. I just want to go on record by saying that mothers should not have to have these conversations with our black sons.
Thank you so much for that comment. Really appreciate that one comment. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So my name is Scott Schneider. I'm a 36-year resident of Montgomery County. And I had 3 quick points to make. One of them is the number one way that people interact with the police is through traffic stops. And the police do what they call pretext stops, where they stop you because you've violated some law, like, well, you didn't put your turn signal on, something minor. And I think we need to look at the racial disparities in pretext stops, because that's where they bump up their number of arrests. But secondly, when they do stop you, they ask, is it okay if I search your car? And most people are afraid to say no, because it feels like an admission that you might be guilty. They need to give people a Miranda-type warning that says, is it okay if I search your car? You have the right to refuse a search, and if you refuse the search, it won't be held against you. And the last thing I wanted to point out is, everyone always talks about, well, the solution is we need to train our officers better. We need to train them on diversity, on implicit bias. I'm not really sure that training is effective. I'd like to see any data supporting that. The real problem is the differential in power between the police and the people that they're stopping.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. All right, right here.
Hi, my name is Ann Everett, and first of all, I want to thank you for this forum tonight. I have many of the concerns that have been expressed tonight, but I want to share something that I think is working. And I would like to see the new police chief and leadership at all levels encourage and support this. In my community, there was an issue that we had, and because of my concern, I volunteered to be chair of security in my community so that we could deal with the issues. What we have done over the last year and a half is build a relationship with our police department, the local police department. We brought them out. We brought them out to our homeowners association, which happens to be Hampshire Greens. We brought them out to our homeowners association, let the people get to know them, share what our concerns are. Whenever we have issues, they appointed a liaison who works directly with us. When there are issues in the community or neighborhood, they share them around in the police department. Also, we have invited the police, including the cadets, out to our community or neighborhood for picnics and things like that, for them to get to know us. We have asked for increased police patrols, which they provide on a monthly basis. We have to ask for it, but they provide them. So my point is, it's working. I think it can work better. We will continue to work on that, but I would like to see the new police chief encourage and support and that and have it go at all levels in the police department so that we can get to know them, they can get to know us, and there is not that them and us kind of relationship.
Thank you so much. Right here.
Hello, my name is Diane Kinche, and this is going to be very short. I think I hear a lot about community policing, but I don't think that's all that's needed in a county where in 2017 we had 523 use of force incidents, and out of that number, 2/3 of them were on people of color. We need to look into those statistics. There are three specific areas that I have been thinking about. One of them, in some progressive police forces around the country, they're using Harvard University's bias test, and that's administered to police officers before and during their time of service. And I hear they have been having some success in weeding out officers who show potential for implicit bias. Another thing that I was interested in, the Justice Department has also developed a continuum of use of force. And I'd like to make sure that that continuum is monitored and it is taught consistently, and that police officers have to demonstrate that before they escalate a situation, they have followed the proper protocol in following the continuum of use of force. Another thing that was mentioned, and I think someone already mentioned it, I want us to have ready access to data on use of force and traffic, pretextual traffic and pedestrian stops, disaggregated by race, ethnicity, gender, and age.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that comment. Let me just check in with folks now. Let me just tell where we are. We are right now with about 40 minutes left. And so we want to really make sure we get a chance to hear as many comments as possible. So we'll get a couple more here, and we'll go up to the deck up here for those who have comments up there next. And we'll keep coming back. We'll get as many as we possibly can, folks. So be aware of that as you come and make your comment so that your fellow residents can get in their word as well. Okay, thank you, Lorna.
All right, well. Hi, I'm Danielle Blocker. I'm 24 years old. I grew up in Silver Spring, went to Lake High School, and I currently live in Silver Spring. I'm a Montgomery County resident, but I went to college in St. Louis, about 15 minutes away from Ferguson, Missouri. And many of my friends, different people were profiled, unarmed people shot, all of that before and after Mike Brown, right? But I remember in St. Louis, always being scared to walk at night, sometimes scared to walk certain places during the day, scared for my friends, scared when they would go to 7-Eleven, and being so excited moving back here. One of the reasons is not having to feel scared, right? Not having to feel that fear. Oh, thank goodness. Though, St. Louis is great, and there are a lot of great people there that I like, but I was happy that hopefully going back to Montgomery County, I wouldn't feel as scared, right? And so when I see incidents and many forms eerily similar to the ones in St. Louis and Ferguson, and I see unarmed people like Robert White being shot and killed, and not much discipline happening from that. When I see people at McDonald's being profiled, right, I worry. I don't want to be scared for myself, for my friends, whether to go to a White Oak, to go to a McDonald's in White Oak, or Silver Spring, or to 7-Eleven the same way. And I think it's great that we're looking into advisory boards and things like that. There were many advisory boards in St. Louis, right? There was a big Ferguson commission, and everyone was there, and they came up with many studies and suggestions, and some were very helpful, but a lot is still the same, right? And so I think advisory is good, but without discipline and accountability, I still won't feel safe.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Up here. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. I am Vernon Ricks. I have been involved with the Montgomery County Police as a private citizen since Mr. Duncan was county executive. I served on a citizens group that studied and submitted a report addressing the concerns in the department and suggested ways to improve the department's image in the community. And we have continued to advise and have input to the MCP leadership. Several years ago, I represented Montgomery County on the Attorney General's task force on the use of tasers, and it was that task force that determined that the taser should be labeled not as a non-lethal weapon, but as a less than lethal weapon in the use of force. I have represented Montgomery County on several national committees with the chiefs of police organizations and the Department of Justice to look at community policing in the U.S. In these many meetings, I had the opportunity to meet folks both as citizens in uniform and found that Montgomery County does not have a bad police force. In fact, our department is well respected among those in the country. However, it is not to say it is a perfect organization, and there is always room for improvement. In my serving, I had the chance to meet and discuss concerns in other police communities. I assure you that there are no perfect departments in America. I have been personally involved by personally interviewed by search groups looking to hire officers from MCP to take leadership positions in other departments across the country because of Montgomery County's respected leadership. Montgomery County is no longer a bedroom community, but is now a full-blown urban community with all of the concerns that come with that title. And I'll get through in just a second. When you look at many of the major cities and counties, Chicago, Philly, in the states, Arizona, Florida, and other places, including our DMV, and the list goes on, of departments we may draw from, the only place you may find the perfect match is right here in Montgomery County. Marcus Jones has been named interim chief because he is highly qualified to lead the Montgomery County Department. He has been involved in Montgomery County communities for his entire time in the department. He knows the communities and has worked in harmony with the residents and businesses. He is and has been a respected leader, and that is why he has earned the rank of assistant chief and now interim chief. I think, along with a host of other residents, that he has the skills, the knowledge, and the vision to lead the department into the future.
Okay.
And without hesitation, should be made permanent chief.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Right here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kelly Ventura. I have been a Montgomery County resident for over 12 years. I graduated from Lee in high school, and I would like the new chief to be able to understand cultural differences, especially the Latino community. There's big language barrier, and our needs are always not understood due to the language complications. So I would like the new chief to understand that cultural differences are around the world and be able to implement strategies to reach the communities that have not been reached due to the language barrier. And also, I would like to know how we can be informed as civilians about our rights and responsibilities when engaging with the police, especially the young community that are still struggling in finding their identity.
Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate that comment. Up top.
Hi, my name is Rebecca. I've been a Silver Spring resident for most of the past 30 years. I have 2 points to try to cover really quickly. One is I have a friend who works in downtown Silver Spring, close to the Progress Place homeless shelter. And recently he had an incident. There are several homeless people who do come in and out of the place where he works, and they're generally not a problem. In one case, there was a minor problem. He spoke with a police officer after it, and the officer was very, very negative about homeless people in general. He asked very leading questions. He said, do you have other homeless people who hang around here? And my friend said, yes, they're generally not any trouble. And he said, they generally are trouble. He then proceeded to say, I don't know what the county is thinking, putting a homeless shelter in the middle of the city like this. I blame them. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. The other point I wanted to make is in recent times, I live very close to the place where Robert White was murdered a year ago. This incident, my son was in school, in elementary school, and they had a lockdown. I just felt it's important to mention that this sort of incident, police violence of this level, does impact more people than just the victim. However, that is nothing in comparison with the fact that Robert White's family and friends no longer have him in their lives. This is, it's just in case this doesn't seem to be important enough, it does impact more than just this family and friends. My main point here, though, is that in the stories that I have heard since that time from people of color, particularly Black and brown women, there is a recurring theme of when a police officer seems to feel that he or she is losing their authority over the person they're interacting with, they seem to want to regain it through threatening or fear and intimidation tactics. And that is very alarming to me. You do not lead, and you certainly do not make a community feel safe through threats and intimidation of its community members. That is not protection, that is abuse.
Thank you so much for that comment. Thank you very, very much. Right over here.
Hi, I'm Carol Ehrlich. I'm a longtime resident of Montgomery County, and I came late, so I hope I'm not being repetitive. But although when I got here, I did hear a couple of references to Robert White, and I would certainly be at his vigil. But the big question for me is still, why did that police officer approach him in the first place? He was walking along, no sign of a weapon. And same kind of thing a few weeks ago, those four young Black men were arrested or searched in front of McDonald's. No sign of weapons. They said they were, the reports I read all said they were standing there waiting for a ride to get to work. And there's been a lot of attention put on that one police officer. She used the N-word, and rightfully so. But once again, that manager who called the police and said they were trespassing, why? Especially after they had spent money there, they had eaten breakfast there, and they were just standing there. I just want to say, there have been times in the past couple of years when I have had to call the police. I have public transportation and I walk at night. And just the police were there like that, they were still supporting. And that's great. I want them to keep doing that, but I want them to do that for everyone.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that comment. Excellent. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Just quickly.
Yes, sir.
Man, thank you for your comment. As I mentioned before you got here, we met with about 50 young people, mostly Black and brown students, right before this forum. And I asked them how many of them had been detained and issued trespass orders in the county, which is an order that says you can't, that the 4 young men were given at the White Oak down the street from my house, and almost half of them raised their hand. And they talked about story after story about either being pulled over and the car searched, or having a trespass order saying you can't be somewhere for 12 months in your neighborhood. And this is to the woman who spoke earlier about her 9-year-old son, I think there is an education that needs to happen that people have this anxiety, and you have people being stopped and detained and searched at rates far different from other folks. And that's something we're going to look into. The council, I wrote a letter, we asked for all the trespass orders across the county to know who they're being given to. This is another thing, data-wise, to have transparency and accountability. So I just want you to know we're looking into that issue, because that's a huge issue, and it hurts my heart listening to those young people, and I've heard it over and over again. They just are scared. They don't know how to interact. And you mentioned a 9-year-old. These are 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds or younger. They don't know what to do, and they're intimidated, and that's just not acceptable. And it may not be the intention of officers, again, as I talked about earlier, but it's unacceptable to have large swaths of our community feel this way and be stopped this way by police. And I think part of this forum is to get that out there, that this is not isolated. We have 50 people, half of them have trespass orders. And so we have to address this issue in a holistic way. And so I just want to thank you, and just let you know we're looking into it.
Thank you, sir. Right here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Steve Silverman. I'm a resident of Silver Spring. I'm the founder and executive director of a nonprofit organization called Flex Your Rights. That's flex like a muscle and your rights. And what we do is we educate people about how to have that talk with your kids. When they turn 16, they're starting to drive, and you're worried about them getting pulled over and what's going to happen. We've made a series of educational videos. The most popular one is called 10 Rules for Dealing with the Police. It's called 10 Rules for Dealing with Police, starring Billy Murphy, who's the family attorney of Freddie Gray's family attorney. And definitely check it out. It makes for a great community resource, and it'll teach your kids how to exercise their rights. Also, if you have had a negative police experience and you want to share it, we have also developed a new resource called openpolice.org. It's Open Police Complaints, but if you go to openpolice.org, you can tell your story, because oftentimes people file complaints with the police ignore them, they go away, they don't reveal that information. Police complaints are so important, they need to be collected by an independent organization, because police complaints are too important to be left to the police. So, Open Police Complaints, Flex Your Rights, 10 Rules for Dealing with Police. Thank you so much, and good luck.
Thank you very much for the comment. How many of us in the room have had the talk with our young people? Okay, thank you. Right here.
Yes, my name is Lene, and I'm a resident since probably 45 years or so. I want a police chief that has zero tolerance for racism in the ranks. They have got to go. If you allow one bad apple, it rots the rest, and it disables the trust of the community into the police. My cousin, 21 years old, in 2012 was gunned down by the Montgomery County Police in Silver Spring and was shot 27 times for calling 911 saying he wanted to commit suicide.
Take your time, take your time.
Because of that and several other incidences, I now have PTSD, and cops are one of the triggers. I found out that one of the crisis center's policy, and the crisis center is run by the Montgomery County Police, one of their policies when you call the crisis center and say that you are suicidal is they send police out. And that's fine, but one of their policies is also to handcuff the person. And when they call and are asking for help, they are at least strong enough to know that they need help and are reaching out. They don't need to be treated like a criminal. The Montgomery County Police does not do enough training with the mentally ill. They need to have officers training in the state psychiatric hospital, in local hospitals, and in the homeless shelters. They need more training in mental health because they are not trained enough. They need to be trained in de-escalation tactics. They need to stop the 1033 program and stop militarizing the police. They need to stop the racism.
Thank you.
The racists need to be out.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Over here.
Hello, my name is Nathan Feinberg. I've lived in the county my whole life. I share my perspective. I've seen kind of various sides of how people can be treated and interact with the police. As myself, someone of European descent and of a lighter complexion, the interactions I have with police when I'm by myself or with another white person in the car is usually a very cordial experience. There's been times when I've been flagrantly speeding, changing lanes when I was younger, and given just a warning for that. And whereas there's been other interactions where, if I had a black friend sitting next to me in the car, I've had, for having a stoplight out, had my car searched, 3 or 4 cops come up, K9 unit search my whole car apart, impound my car over, a minor emissions infraction and this sort of thing. So I've seen clearly how the difference in the treatment is based on how I appear and how the person in the car with me might appear. And on that tip, I also want to say, I've heard a lot of people talking tonight about the issue of policing culture and sort of disrespect, aggression, escalation in place of de-escalation. And I think we really need to start there with the little stuff. If we maybe had some sort of a database where it's not for like internal affairs or complaints that your rights were violated or a legal offense, but like to report when cops are behaving in ways that we just don't feel is professional, don't feel like they are acting right. In fact, I think the cop should give you a card with his badge number, his name, and like the website you go to basically like rate my performance. How courteous was I? How professional was I? Right? The same way, like a customer survey, customer feedback survey, right? So we can start cataloging, even match it up with the body cam footage, review it. This doesn't mean you have to say every cop who makes a mistake is bad. But sit them down and say, hey, look, we've been seeing that this is how you're talking to people, and it's happening over and over and over again. We're getting these complaints, and the video backs it up. And we're seeing that there's patterns in terms of who you do it to, in terms of their skin color, their ethnicity, or whatever it may be. We need to start collecting this data so we can have a self-reflection of growth process within the police.
Wonderful comment. Tell you what, again, the county executive indicated that our data people are here and they're hearing you. Great ideas. Thank you so much. Right here.
My name is Mensa Joga. I'm originally from Togo. I'm a member of Mid-County Citizen of Razori Board and also a member of African Affairs with Razori Board. I have a suggestion to make. Being African, and this Montgomery County is one of the best places to live in because of the diversity. I have not seen on the police force anyone from Africa at all. If there is a one, I would like to see where are the police officers that will represent the community we live in. The new chief of police have to put in place a training program, a hiring process that will be able to bring in on board the people who represent the community. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you, sir. We over here, up top there.
Good afternoon, Councilman Jawando. This is for you. Would you consider, when you put your committee together, would you consider reviewing the tape of the incident that occurred between the police officer and the young men at McDonald's and list all the wrong actions the police officer conducted during that encounter? Once the list of errors are gathered, they must become regulations of what a police officer must not do. If a police officer is found guilty of these rules under the conditions that were encountered at the McDonald's, then accountability must be applied. Last but not least, as we know, with our policies in place, the behaviors that the police officer executed gives individuals the supremacy to behave in a manner that the police want to show at McDonald's. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that comment. Yes, sir.
Just briefly, yes, the answer is yes. We've requested the body camera footage. It's being reviewed, is my understanding, and edited to make sure no one that's not in it shouldn't be in it. From all the officers on the scene, we've also requested the trespass order information. So to answer your question, yes, we're looking into that, and that is something that we as the council, and I know the county executive as well, is concerned, and we're going to be looking at.
Okay, next up here. We got right here, please.
Oh, over here, John.
Right there.
Well, first, I've been a county resident for 44 years, and I've never had an interaction with the police, but I know, and I've read about the things that are being said here. And it struck me that, in general, we have an adversarial relationship. Someone has to charge someone with a crime, and people who have been subjected to police abuse feel powerless here. I think an omnibusman, something that they could describe their story of what happened and have it investigated without having to bring formal charges, without, etc., would be useful. I think people need to feel that their story is being heard and being acted upon. At the same time, not risking their life by charging a policeman with a crime.
Thank you so much, sir, for that comment. We do want to recognize Council Member Tom Hucker is here. Councilman, wave your hand. Everybody know you're here. Thank you so much, sir. Next up, we got somebody right over here.
Good evening. My name is Mike. Some of you know who I am. My remarks are addressed to any of the police chief candidates who may be listening in to this program. You've been a cop for probably 20 years now. So tell us, what have you done in the way of innovations that promote civil rights and civil liberties? Don't tell us what you're planning to do. Tell us what your record already is in this. And there's a question I'd like you to ask yourself. If you had been police chief a year ago, would Robert White still be alive today? And if the changes in training and in police policies like use of force, in all these good things you're planning to do, if they had been done a year ago, would Robert White still be alive today? Thank you.
Thank you, sir, very much for that. Thank you, sir. Right here.
I do. Here we go.
Good evening. My name is Ronika Morgan. I've been a resident of the county for about 15 years or so. I have a 19-year-old son, and I, like the mom who was sitting up there, I've had the conversation with my son, giving him very specific instructions about what to do when he encounters the police. I will say that living in Montgomery County is one of the safest places I've ever lived in terms of police protection, so I do want to honor those who do protect and serve this county. I will say, however, that before they are police officers, they are human beings first. And I think that, like the rest of the communities that they serve, there are some supports that are needed for police. I think there are mental health services, for example, that are needed. I think that fear begets fear. And when you put people who are afraid in an environment with people who are afraid, then violence will surely erupt. So it is my request of the chief that there be supports in place to allow a space for police officers to receive supports they need so that they can truly protect and serve this county. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that comment. We got a person over here to my right.
Good evening, my name is Rashida, and I would like to make a statement. We've been talking for the past 90 minutes about police brutality and so on. That's not going to change until we, especially in the immigrant community, go back and have a conversation and be part of the police force. We need to encourage our community, people in the community, to not only to work, but to be a police officer. That is the only way that this problem will be solved. It's not just talking about it. We also have to own up to it, that we need to do something about it and be a part of the police force. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that comment. We're going right over here. Sean, we'll get some folks down in the front as well.
Right here.
Please.
Good evening, everyone. Jeannie Maddox Tundara. Two of the most challenging situations I faced with Montgomery County Police had to do with being at public hearings like this one, with the commissioners of Montgomery County. One had to do with the Planning Commission, where Casey Anderson was present and called out the police because we were quietly standing at the back of the room with signs that said Black Lives Matter. The other one was more recently at the Housing Opportunities Commission, where once again, the police were there in full gear. I would have thought maybe I was in Iraq, maybe I was in Syria, maybe I was in Afghanistan. Why do these policemen have to come in with full gear to drag Montgomery County citizens out of public hearings? These people people are appointed by our county executive. We have to have people in place who respect the citizens of Montgomery County to freedom of expression. We go there to speak. We don't go with guns. What are the police doing there with full military gear to knock us down? This is the kind of thing that I plead to our county executive. I worked for him. I worked for his election. Please, get these policemen out of our public hearings. These commissioners cannot call them in to inflict harm, to threaten, to menace, and to incite violence. This has got to stop. We have to have a demilitarization of Montgomery County Police. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that comment. We're right here.
Hi, I'm Katie Stouse. I was born and raised in Silver Spring. Went to Springbrook High School and Tacoma Park Intermediate. I think I don't have a lot to add because most people have said it all, but I think one big thing that Montgomery County government has been falling back on in not really implementing real oversight and real transparency as well has been Maryland state law. And there are statements that there's a law enforcement bill of rights. It hasn't come up very much tonight. But the law enforcement bill of rights in Maryland puts Maryland behind Alabama and Florida as far as police transparency. And to me, it's not really okay for Montgomery County to say, well, our hands are tied, we can't tell you the result of this investigation because of police privacy, while Montgomery County isn't doing everything they can in the state of Maryland to change this law. Montgomery County has a lot of influence, our legislators are well respected, and I know that some members of the council wrote a letter to support this, but we need way more activism in Annapolis to change this, because as long as we're just kind of rubbing, like wiping our hands clean of it like it's up to Annapolis, and we're not taking leadership on the issue, it's going to be a real problem. The other thing is the county has been hesitant to share data. It's not just getting the data people on it. There has been a real hesitancy. I asked for certain data on use of force in November. I was told I would get it. I asked again in December. I then tweeted the police department, was told I would get it. To this day, it is now June. I do not have the information. It has nothing to do with individual police. So it does not violate any of the LEOBOR, the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights requirements. The police don't want to share this information. And as long as we just say, let's just get it on the website without addressing the fact that the police don't want these things to change, I want the next chief, I asked Chief Manger about a year ago if he would go to Annapolis, and he was very wishy-washy on what he would ask for in terms of change. So he puts Montgomery County behind states like Alabama, and we know their history. So I think we need to stand up for these changes at the state level, and we want our county council and our county executive to be leading on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Let me check in. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
State legislature was mentioned, and I saw a couple of people here, our colleagues, that do a great job. Delegate Charlotte Crutchfield, I don't know if she's still here, but she was here. There she is over in the corner. Delegate Janelle Wilkins, I saw, I think here. And Delegate Gabe Acevero, is he still here? He's in the back, yeah. And then I know we have my colleagues, reps from Councilmember Albanaz's class, and Nancy Navarro and Friedson are here as well. And if I missed anyone, thank you. And of course, Tom Hucker, thank you. And I know we have police union reps here. I know there's some officers here. I'm not gonna call them out, but they're here, and I'm glad that they're listening. We want to appreciate that you all are here. And then Jim just passed me 2 more cards. Chief of Staff, Roland Ikihola is here, and then I know I saw Joseph Eon from Congressman Brasson's office is here, and Ms. Chavez, Katia Chavez from Senator Van Hollen's office. So thank you all for being here. And Dale Tibbetts from the Executive Office. And the Chief Administrative Officer, Andrew Klein, and keep it going. So we've got a lot of people here that care. And again, I know there's police in the I'm not going to call them out, but thank you all for being here. I think it's important that you're watching. I'm sure there's others watching at home. So thank you, Jim. Go ahead.
All right, we're checking in with one another. We've got about 20 minutes. Can we just show a show of hands with those who would like yet to speak?
Yeah.
Okay, for those who are speaking, you see that your neighbors want to be able to say something too as well. So please keep that in mind as we really rip through this next 20 minutes so everybody gets a chance at least to say something tonight. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm David Atkinson, a Montgomery County resident. Just a comment, quick, and a question. So first, I have had, for the most part, good experience myself And I am supportive of the positive reinforcement that Councilmember Giwando has mentioned. Also, I actually want to second what was also stated, because once we have laws that deal with reviews, like the LED Act and the next piece of legislation you're working on, if the laws that people review against are really too permissive for police, like law enforcement, Officers' Bill of Rights, and other things like that, like with the Maryland Public Information Act, really I would want from the police chief a way to, if we can't do something at the county level, raise it to the state so we have better laws that we can review against. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Right here.
My name is Patricia Fenn. I'm a member of the Montgomery County NAACP, and several of our board members are here. The police department has a service in which mental health people, professionals, are called to an arrest site. They're called crisis intervention teams, and they come when a dispatch call comes, and they are sent to an arrest site to de-escalate the situation and prevent loss of life. And that's because 1 out of every 2 arrests in the United States involve a person with mental health issues, and 1 out of every 4 people who die as a result of arrest are people with mental health issues. So in District 20, where Robert White was killed, Delegate Lori Charcudian introduced legislation called Crisis Intervention Team Training that would establish standards and policies for law enforcement agencies throughout the state of Maryland. So it passed the House and got buried in the Senate Judiciary Proceedings Committee by the Senate Chairman, Bobby Zirkin. So I urge you next session to support this legislation so that these kinds of standards benefit people throughout Maryland, including the model that we have here in Montgomery County.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate it very, very much. Right back here.
My name is Frank Luncheon. I've been a county resident for about 35 years. I lived in Albany for about 20 of those years. And of course, my son was stopped several times, and so were his African-American friends. None of his white friends were stopped. I think, though, that we have a culture that needs to be developed, whereby the good people in the police department dominate. I understand implicit racism, but they're also very bad actors. And we need to make sure they don't rise through the ranks and influence new generations of cops. And I also think that the penalties for misconduct should be increased. We see many cops who behave badly get suspended or be confined to the office, or sometimes there's no penalty. In the private sector, if you do some of the things that violate policy, you're terminated. So those are my comments.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate that very much indeed. Right here.
Hello, good evening, and thank you very much for this opportunity. This is great, and we like this forum to be repeated so that people can express themselves and learn and teach others. My name is Samira Hussein. We came to Maryland in 1982, and before that I lived in Florida until someone put a gun in my husband's head and wanted to steal narcotics from the pharmacy. He said, we survived many wars, we cannot stay here, so we just drove all the way to wound up in this lovely, beautiful state. We lived in Tacoma Park for 7 years, and we blended in fine with everyone until 1989 when my family, we moved to Gaithersburg, and that was the beginning of the unwelcome situation. So my family faced harassment, hate crimes, continuous basis, on daily basis. My children were beaten up in school. Nobody could do anything for them. And it continued until, like, for about 40 years. In 1994, when the swastika was put in my car. Well, I'm Palestinian, I'm Muslim. I had no clue what the swastika meant at that time until my oldest son had to educate me. He was in 7th grade and tell me what it meant. And that's the only time we really got attention from the police. Before that, the police would come to our home and they would try to get us, how related are we to Saddam Hussein? They left the focus why my door's broken, my car is sitting in the ground, and all slashed tires, and that's the only thing that they want to focus, how related to Saddam Hussein. Anyway, if the police did their job and spoke to that one family we knew who harassed us, things wouldn't escalate. Now, up to this time, our case is unsolved. We have paid hundreds, if not thousands of dollars fixing cars. My car was vandalized 7 times. My husband's car, my son's car, plus all the doors and windows that have been shattered. But that's not the thing. It's my family have been traumatized for years to come. And I wanted to thank the city of Gaithersburg, Mr. Sidney Katz, right there. When he was my former mayor, he always made sure my family is safe. I'm sorry, I cannot say this about Montgomery County Police, but Gaithersburg Police always guarded my family. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Right here.
Hi, my name is Claire Harrigan, and I'm born and raised in Silver Spring. Anyway, so I have a request and then a comment about what I'd like to see in the new police chief. And unfortunately, I have to give a teeny bit of background for that. 13 years ago this month, my husband was leaving his office very late at night at the Air Rights building in Bethesda. And he was the victim of an armed robbery. The guy talked to him for 10 minutes, called off his name and address and said, "You better give me everything I want, or I'll come to your house and you'll be sorry and your family will." When the interaction after 10 minutes was over and he talked to him, and all of the things from his wallet were on the ground, and he'd gotten the cards and the PIN numbers, my husband said, "Can I pick the stuff off the ground?" And the guy said, "You can get it later." And my husband started walking away, and he shot him 6 times in the back. Then he came over and made sure he was alive and shot him in the head.
Oh my goodness.
So the point is, for 13 years now, I've been trying, there was lots of evidence there. You know, he had touched his wallet, he had touched every single thing in his wallet. There were lots of pieces of evidence from which they could get DNA evidence. Montgomery County said, "We don't do DNA evidence. We don't collect profiles from crime scenes. We don't do that." I harangued them and harangued them and harangued. It was awful. They finally, in January, they destroyed most of the evidence for purposes of getting a DNA profile. But they finally, in January of 2007, did a DNA profile from the wallet and one of the cards. And they, since then, have refused to put that profile into the federal database. They absolutely refuse. I've talked to them over and over again. I've talked to every single one of the chiefs. The acting chief, Hamlin, says to me, "You don't get solved crimes through science. You solve crimes through hard police work." All of them have said that. I don't know. They've picked out some guy, they did early on, picked out some guy that's in jail in Anne Arundel County and said, you're safe. This guy in Anne Arundel County did it, and he's never getting out of jail. That was like a month after this happened. They threatened me and told me that I needed to stop saying that this crime wasn't solved, or they were never gonna charge anybody. And they flatly refused to put the DNA profile from the crime scene into CODIS. CODIS is the big federal FBI database. So, my request is that you go tomorrow to the police department, profile from the crime scene is sitting in the lab at Montgomery County, and you ask them to put it into CODIS, so that maybe they can find the person and get them off of the streets. And then the second thing, as far as a new police chief, I would like to see Montgomery County come into the 21st century and start using science in the police department. You know, that they have a little crime lab now, and they do a little bit more, but police departments that use science to identify criminals, you can do it more cheaply, more efficiently,
Yes.
and most particularly, you don't charge and prosecute the wrong person. All of us should be very unhappy about what's happening, or happy about all of these people that are being exonerated, that sat in prison for decades because they were charged and prosecuted, and they weren't the guilty guy.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anyway.
Listen, thank you so much. I know that was tough for you. Thank you very much. Yes. Over to Rob.
Hi, my name is Lori Duker. I support all the powerful testimony tonight about race and the police department. I'm worried about victims who have dark skin. I think police answer a lot of 911 calls on domestic violence, and when they don't see a visible injury, they don't even write a report. And 50% of strangulations don't show a visible injury. That's particularly true with dark skin. We got information through the Maryland Public Information Act, and the 911 domestic violence calls, there were written police reports on about 3,000 cases. There were 11,000 cases without any written police report. Some of that could be truancies and other things, but those calls all came from homes. I'm sure a lot of it is domestic violence, and I think officers should have to write a report. They shouldn't have discretion about what they consider important. They should be writing those reports. And the data is so important, and I hope you put more data, that the police chief will be able to be putting more data out. How many 911 calls by police district every month? How many lethality assessments did the police do and connect that victim to a social worker? There's a lot more data that we need to hold people accountable. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. Really appreciate that. Right here.
Hi, my name is Nini Hassanin, and I'm gonna look at the bright side here. I mean, I realize that racism is embedded in the system, and I must have been in denial because I didn't want to really admit that there was a racism, because I believe we're created by one God from one clay. That clay did not have a color. So who are you to discriminate against the way I look or my skin color? I mean, if you have a problem, go deal with God, not me. I was created that way. So I have no choice of how I came. So that's number one. And then the second thing is that we need to embrace diversity, not embrace divisiveness, because there is a rich history in us being diverse. We need to work with each other, and we need to learn about each other. So my recommendation for our next chief executive is not to do more training, but to do more racial equity workshop. And I believe that food and art are universal language. Let's connect about food. Let's get the community together. Learn about my kushari and my falafel, and learn why I wear the scarf. I'll be more than happy to share with you why I wear my scarf. So don't arrest me because I'm a Muslim. I mean, thank God that I never get in trouble. And we also have to recognize that we have a lot of good police officers. Not every police officers are bad. So I just don't want to leave here thinking that every police officer there is against me. We're all human beings. We're all created by one God. So my advice is, let's connect with each other, with the community over food and art, and let's walk and talk and have fun and embrace our human being and treat each other with respect and dignity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, sir.
That is
Mimi Hassan, who's offered to cook for all of us after the forum here today, who's also a Democratic Central Committee member, so we thank you for being here and for your service.
Baklava is first. Baklava is first.
And then I was given a note that Tacoma Park Police Chief Antonio Duvall is here and wanted to be acknowledged. So thank you, sir. I know you, if you're here still, wave.
Chief, where are you?
He's in the back. There you go. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Chief.
All right.
All right, we over here.
Hi. I believe that the civilian board bill by Councilmember Hans Reamer would be strengthened if 1, members of the civilian board were elected, not appointed. 2, Montgomery County Police Department and the Fraternal Order of Police are not voting members. 3, the police were mandated to adopt policy changes recommended by the board. And 4, the legislators crafting the bill asked impacted communities what they wanted and allowed that to inform their legislation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have we got another person who wants to say something? We got somebody
Yeah, I
here.
think I have 2 people on this side. Am I
Very
correct? You and...
Okay, please.
Good day. My name is Jermaine Boynes, and I've been living in Silver Spring since 1977, but at my house since 1983. My issue is about the illegal parking that takes place on my street. There are not very many houses on the street, but the street is not wide enough to have double parking, so there's parking only on one side. Mr. Leggett, before he left, he placed 2 signs in front of my house so that there would be no parking. It is impossible for me to back out of my parking lot. And I think it is so unfair to me since I'm paying so much property tax that I really can't drive in and drive out. Whenever I call the non-emergency number for the police department, they do come, but sometimes the cop would come to the door and ask me, what do I want him to do? I'm not a policeman. You see there's a sign that says no parking, so I think you should know to probably give them a ticket. Because if they get tickets every night when they park there, of course they're going to stop parking there because they're going to have to pay all those tickets. So I would like something to be done about that, please.
Thank you so much for this comment. I think we got somebody here. Yes, please.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. I'm Elizabeth Wallace. I'm from Tacoma Park, Maryland. I actually serve on Police Chief Duvall's advisory board. It was a long road for me to get there, not because of him, because of me. I was encouraged to, there were some things that happened in Tacoma Park a few years ago that were not good. I decided, I was so angry about it that I decided I gotta get unangry, so I took the Citizens Police Advisory Board, Citizens Police Academy, so I could start knowing police persons who were okay, that I could talk to in a friendly atmosphere. From then, it went on to joining ACLU, and then with, when Robert White died, we started looking into police accountability, killed, okay. Police accountability and transparency, and we came across House Bill 1016 from 2016. And in it, it has a possibility for a police chief to set up a mediation board in their department, so that complaints against police officers that are non-violent can be addressed through a mediation process. So fortunately, Police Chief Duvall is considering that. And I think it also means that we need more mediators to be able to be trained in those specific mediations. So I'm on my 80% done of my mediation process. I get my certificate tomorrow, and I just want to encourage more people that if we can make this possible with our new police chief in Montgomery County, we are going to need more mediators for that possibility. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Over here.
My name is Clarence Stone. I've been a resident of Montgomery County for over 4 decades. A point that I want to make is I read the Internal Affairs report on the shooting of Robert White. What I want to say is that I think Internal Affairs did a very skillful job of deflecting attention from the police officer himself and from the department. That is perhaps predictable, since that was to be a publicly released document. What I do not see in that document, or do I see in anything from the police department subsequently, is a look at what that report might say about how the department should change its way of doing things. Let's don't kid ourselves that Internal Affairs is an actual investigation on behalf of the public. So what I see in that report is no question asked of the police officer of what was in your mind, what were you thinking when you stopped Robert White? Did you ask yourself, what am I about to do that will help build trust between the police and the community? No, there's nothing there that would suggest that. So I would say, spend some time looking at your Internal Affairs reports and ask yourself what could be done differently, because what is in place now is not working.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stone. Thank you indeed. I believe we have heard from every person. We've got one more. Absolutely, ma'am. You go ahead. You end the night for us, okay?
My name is Kay. I've lived in Montgomery County for just under 10 years. I want to make sure that we're clear that when we say we want, some people have said they want community policing. Community policing is not forcing someone to stop and answer a series of commanding, aggressive questions. That's not community policing. And when, after the killing of Robbie White, the police chief was asked about under what circumstance a police officer is justified in approaching someone in a way that is commanding fear, basically telling them they have to stop or they have to answer questions about why they're in a particular place. And the police said that they're entitled to do that under any situation, under any circumstance. They don't need any justification. They don't need to believe that someone has committed a specific crime. They don't need to have seen someone committing a crime. They can just decide, as they did with Robbie White, that there was a tear in his jacket, and that's enough to start the process of escalation. Because when a police officer who is armed, not only with guns but with impunity, starts approaching someone and firing questions at them and telling them to stop, that is itself an escalation, and it's terrifying. The people in our county who are at most at risk are people of color, specifically Black people, but people who are having mental illness or developmental disabilities are greatly at risk too. If a police officer tells my autistic daughter to stop, if she sees a man with a woman or man with a gun and is told, you need to stop right now, why are you here? My autistic daughter will freeze, or she will run away. I can have as many conversations as I want. That won't stop her, that won't protect her. People need to be protected from police, and something this police chief needs to do is to re-examine whether or not police can just approach people aggressively and escalate things with no justification at all. That's really dangerous when we also have problems with white supremacist thinking and racism and a real inability to be recognizing the special needs of people with disabilities, developmental disabilities, and mental illness.
Thank you so much. All right. Okay. Very quickly, what was going to happen with all that you've said, and by the way, don't we live in a marvelous county that every person who wanted to speak tonight had a chance to speak? What about that? We'll do something with it now. Well said, sir. Well said, but the fact about it is that in some communities this does not happen. And so we got to start in place. So I want to thank you all for communicating to all of us. Now, what's going to happen real quickly is this. We got a final word from our 2 elected officials. We got a final word also from our county administrator before we leave tonight. But what's going to occur with all of the information that you have, folks, is that it's going to be put in a binder and utilized by that community search team with the new police chief prospects. And that will be part of the information they will have to be a part of that particular group. The other thing is that there'll also be formulated some questions from what you have said so that the interview team will be asking then those candidates these important questions about these very, very important issues that you have raised tonight. So again, thank you for being here. Before we leave, again, we'll make sure again that turn back over then to our county executive and also to our county council person for any final comments, and then over then to Caroline Sturgis, who will again dismiss us for this evening. So again, Mark, it's on you, sir.
So first I want to thank everybody for coming out and talking tonight. It's helpful, and people said a lot of things that I'm sure are going to wind up in the discussion with the candidates for the next police chief. I have been very careful about what I say about a couple of things. Robert White's shooting is one of them. I said I have been very careful about what I say about a couple of things that I think are important, because I'm in the position where I have to pick the next police chief. I do not want the next police chief and the candidates to know what I'm thinking so they can feed me back exactly what they know I want to hear. And so if I had said what I thought about everything, then they would know how to respond. I've seen interviews like that before. That's not productive. So I'm going to have my questions, and I fully intend to raise a lot of issues as well as to share what my personal perspective is on a lot of this, because I think there's an enormous amount of validity in what people have said here. I will say something about Robert White that's I just think is Captain Obvious stuff. There was a moment in that tape, which I watched over and over again, where the police officer said, "I think I have cop by suicide." That dispatcher on the other end should have been trained that if somebody says, "I think I got caught by suicide," that's a call to the crisis intervention team. That should have been an automatic. And I don't think those things happen enough, and I also don't think we have the resources or have properly resourced that part of what we do in the county. So I just always found that as a glaring omission on at least two people's part in this case. I think, there's been a lot of talk about the endemic nature of this problem in the department, but this is part of a broader problem in society, and it's why when I ran last year, actually, Nancy Navarro and I put in legislation that's going to require the county to adopt racial equity lenses, because racism is not confined to any one department. And frankly, it's not confined to departments of the county, but a lot of work has to be done in the community. And some of my friends have heard me say this before, but in the movie about James Baldwin, and at the end of the movie, Baldwin's asked, what are we going to do about it? I think it's like the Negro's problem. And Baldwin said, frankly, this is a white person's problem. I said, the fact that Black people have to constantly think about what other people are thinking about them 24/7 throughout their lives, there's nothing that you can do that's going to change that. The problem is the people who have formed opinions based on what you look like. And that's what has to change. And that's the harder work that we've got to figure out how to engage in. But we're hiring a racial equity officer. Nancy Navarro is working with the council on creating legislation on a racial equity program in the county, and we intend to implement things that we can do at the county level to make the changes that at least address the things that we're able to touch and hopefully have a broader effect on the community. But this is important work to do, and this is not going to be simple. When we deal with the police department, this is not just an issue of leadership, but we need to engage the workforce. We need to engage the unions in this discussion. People have no idea how many times the unions have come forward and talked about this issue about profiling, or the issue about, what was the word for stops for pretext? Being encouraged to make stops for no legitimate reason in order to generate searches. The first place I heard from it was from people who were working on it. With the new chief, we're going to have a chance to change that. And that's one of the things I absolutely intend to change. But we need to engage the people who do this work every day, because part of the change has to involve them. And setting up two sides to this. I mean, I always felt Montgomery County was better than most, which doesn't make it perfect. It is good to see that people from our departments get promoted and picked by other people, but it doesn't mean that everything that was done was everything that needed to be done. And so I want to make sure that we make this decision. We pick a chief who reflects the concerns of this community, and that they have enough vision and can talk about what they want to do in a way that gives us confidence that things can continue to change. And I've said this before, I cannot think of a more important appointee that I have, because nobody else has life and death powers. Nobody else sets people or things in motion that the consequences of which can be extraordinarily bad. And so having the right person leading us through what I think is, it's a trying time for police, and some of these events have been really hard on the community and all of us. We need to make sure we get the right person out of this. So I'm going to make sure the right questions get asked. Your contribution tonight will make sure that the people who are looking at the chiefs have heard what people in this community expect from a candidate, and we'll be able to hear those folks' responses to the kind of questions I think are going to be raised. Questions from here and questions from other things that are of concern, particularly to me. So again, I want to thank you for coming here, and thank you for sharing. But the last request I make is, if you ever have an incident where you feel that it didn't turn out the way it was supposed to, or didn't proceed the way it was supposed to, ask for the body camera footage. Anybody who's got a story to tell can say, I want to see the body camera footage of my incident. And that, the whole point of body camera footage was to put out there for people to see what actually happened. No more of somebody said this or somebody said that, but you got a camera now. So we've got the cameras. If it's not, I would not charge for it. That would be absurd. You'd never be able to get it. So I will follow up on that. But if you've got concerns and you've been involved in something you think needs examination, ask for it.
Thank you. It's been great to partner with you on this. I want to also thank everyone for coming and staying to the end and participating. I want to thank my staff who are here, all of them who worked hard with the county executives team to put this together, and I know there's many of them here as well. Quickly, county executive mentioned the equity framework, and I just spoke to Council President Navarro yesterday about this, and we got the budget behind us. The intention is to build on the work of the previous council and have a bill in the fall that implements a racial equity and social justice lens on all legislation. And so that's a big commitment from this council. We're going to need community input on that. There's another big racial equity training up county in Germantown coming up in a couple of weeks. So if you haven't, I went to one yesterday with my young son, who's 4.5 months. He started his racial equity training early.
and Long Branch and the community center where I grew up in that neighborhood. And so they're happening all across the smaller conversations as well, which is a good thing, which is what we're going to need. And that's where I wanted to just end. We need relationship in our community, and that includes with the police. One of the big questions I'm going to be asking, the county executive appoints and the council confirms director nominees, and I think this nomination will be scrutinized and should be at the highest levels. Because again, you're talking about life and death situations, taking people's liberty, in the solemn trust of protecting and serving our community, which is what the police, the power we vest in them, rightfully so. And we have to have relationship. And we're going to have a briefing in the Public Safety Committee, and I want to thank Councilmember Katz again, on community policing and to hear what the department's doing. But I think we need to expand that. And I mentioned earlier some of the things I think we need to look at and how we are taking best practices from around the country and making sure that everything we do is about building relationship with community. It's not adversarial. It's not about going out and putting on your flak jacket and getting in the community. It's about building community. And I think there are many, I know there are many officers that want to do that work and want to be a part of that, including folks that are represented by labor. And so we need to have that conversation. Last thing I'll say is I remain optimistic because our police are dealing with what are societal failures. They have to deal with people at the end of the problem, mental health, poverty, educational failures, all these issues. And so they have to be equipped and we have to hold them to high standards, but it's a societal failure when there's an arrest. If we have to get to the point of arrest and a ticket, we have failed as a society. And so we have to hold them accountable. We also need to do what we need to do in our other areas to make sure that people aren't coming to that level of poverty or wealth inequality. And Mark and I have talked about things that criminalize poverty and things that force police officers to enforce vagrancy and homeless and other things. There's other things we need to do to make their job easier and then hold them accountable. And I love the woman that mentioned mental health training for officers too. That's important. So you all really helped us tonight. You shared your stories. I want to acknowledge the trauma and the real pain that was expressed by so many, and I want to thank you for your bravery. Those of us, I got my own experiences, and many of us do, that with law enforcement, and these are hard things to talk about. And so I want to thank everyone for being brave and doing that. You can clap on that if you like. The last thing I'll say, I keep saying the last thing, this is actually the last thing. I'm actually the only person on the council that actually worked for Montgomery County Police Department. People don't know that, and I worked 20 years ago as an AmeriCorps member in the 3rd District Station for a year. And many of my friends and mentors are members of the police department. There's a way to do this. This is not about being anti-police. This is about being pro-community. And there's a way to participate in policing and relationship in a way that can be positive for everybody, and we need to get there. But we have to realize that we're not there, and not run away from that. Is Montgomery County better than some places? Sure, but that's our problem in a lot of ways. We're better than a lot of people, so we rest on our laurels. And we have work to do. We can't just say we have the top 3 diverse cities in the country. We have to live up to the responsibility of having the top 3 diverse cities in the country. And so I thank you all for being here and look forward to working with you in the years and months to come. Thank you.
All right.
It's on? You guys can hear me? Okay, great. So I'm only going to take a few minutes to wrap it up with showing what is our next steps. For those that took the time to complete the survey, I want to share what the survey results revealed tonight. Sarah, how many people completed the 72? All right, so we had 72 individuals complete the survey tonight, so thank you very much. So the top 3 characteristics and competencies that we'd like to see in our police chief. The first is appreciation for diversity, followed by integrity, and the third is honesty. So those top 3 right there are no surprises. The second question, if there was a characteristics or a competency listed on the question that is vital, please write it here. The one that most people commented on was accountability. The third one, what issues should the incoming chief focus on? The top three looks like at 39% is racism and racial equity. The second at 34% is transparency and accountability. Followed with the third at 28% is community outreach and engagement. Fourth question, what is the biggest challenge that the new chief will face? It looks like the top is the police culture at 33%, followed by racial bias being at 31%, and the third is public perception and trust. The fifth question is what actions, policies would you like to see in Montgomery County Police Department continue? It looks like the top at 30% is community policing and outreach. The second is transparency at 26%, followed by the third is police training at 23%. Let's see, so the question number 6 was one where you had an opportunity to just type, how can the police department most effectively and productively engage and collaborate with specific communities? So these are just a sample of some of the responses that you typed in. And then the last question was, what would you most like to ask the candidates for the police chief? So those are your responses that are being scrolled right there. So our steps going forward is we're going to have our data team, our county staff folks, analyze all of this information. All of this will be analyzed and put into a report. It will be shared with the county executive, as well as the candidates for the police chief. All this information will be provided to them. We will also release all of this information publicly. So if you have not had a chance to complete the survey will be open until Monday, June 10th. Please feel free to complete it. Please add your questions. So all of your feedback will be incorporated into that report. And then the last thing I'm going to say is if you're interested in receiving additional information from us, you may sign up at our newsletter from the Office of Partnership. Their address is Montgomery County, Maryland.gov/partnerships with an S. So please feel free to visit our website, sign up. There you'll get additional information and future listening sessions. So thank you very much for your attendance tonight.